Hey, what's up guys? This review of Ghostwire Tokyo is spoiler free. If you enjoy it, drop me a thumbs up, I do appreciate it. Ghostwire Tokyo is a paranormal first-person action game that has you play as Akito, a man who gets possessed by a spirit detective named KK. The plot is very simple. KK and Akito must, together, hunt down this masked mystery man who has kidnapped Akito's sister in order to take over the living world. So here's how the game is actually set up. The main story is around 5 to 8 hours depending on the difficulty. It's linear and yes, it's very short. It's set in a small open world dotted with side missions notated by green circle icons on the map. The map is artificially blockaded by fog that needs to be cleared out to push the playable map space outwards. You do this by opening torii gates guarded by enemies. Clear the enemies out, open the gates, and the map opens up. That's how it works. The rest of the content is based around finding collectibles, which there are a lot of, so this stretches out the total content to upwards of 15 to 20 hours or so if you're a completionist. Overall, I had an okay time with the story, but I wasn't too impressed. It's decent, but the scope is small and it was presented in a way that I didn't find particularly engaging from an interactivity perspective. It's mostly told through voiceovers, phone calls, static cutscenes, rendered at 30 frames per second by the way, and lots of rather humdrum dialogue. It should also be noted that the game just loves to interrupt you. It can be one of those cutscene, walk for 15 seconds, another pointless cutscene kind of game at times. Now add in an over-reliance on detective vision, follow me quest icons, follow me quest trails, and a rather one-dimensional faceless villain, and it can feel pretty dated. There's also no choices to make or any complicated story arcs or storytelling that you wouldn't expect. The problem with the actual characters is that they don't have a lot of time, since the game is very short, to develop, and they don't have much nuance built into their writing, so they can end up feeling pretty predictable. This is not good when the story is so short and there are so few characters. And I am talking about a character cast that can be counted on a single hand. I wouldn't say that they are shallow, they're just incredibly basic like many things in this game. To the game's credit, late-game emotional storytelling is attempted, but overall the complexity and nuance just isn't there to make the experience memorable from start to finish. So overall, the main story and the characters were just okay. In terms of the side missions, they suffer from being fairly banal most of the time as they are surprisingly short and pretty dull often. Most of the time, it's a small, inconsequential task given to you by some sort of faceless ghost spirit you see on your map. Typically, this involves some sort of search mission using your detective vision or a horde-style fight. Finish it quickly, and here's your reward, some cash and XP. Like the story presentation, it feels very dated. Not exactly the sprawling, epic side missions you'd expect from a full-price open-world game. However, to be fair to the game, I did find a few decent ones that tied back to the very few minor characters the game has. Multi-step even, but mostly they were mundane tasks that I forgot about the instant I finished them. And some of them ventured down into being even pretty stupid, like finding toilet paper for a spirit who's taken a dump in a nearby bathroom. Yeah, that's one of the side missions. Thankfully, the Japanese voice acting and the implementation of it is one of the game's biggest strengths, with KK being the best voice actor. Tokyo uses the speaker on your controller to output the treble range of his voice and your TV for the bass. This is a really cool feature. And speaking of the controller, the haptic feedback is also utilized very well with the core gameplay mechanic of wiring. In Ghostwire, you finish or wire enemies that you've dealt enough damage to. This executes them and restores some of your HP, and you have to hold the shoulder button to do this. The controller builds up resistance, so you really do feel like you're ripping their soul straight out of your controller. I really like this feature, however, if you have any issues with arthritis, this actually may be a mechanic that will cause you some discomfort as you'll be doing it a lot. In order for the wiring to happen, you'll obviously need to do some damage to your enemies, and you have 3 elemental attacks and a bow to help you do so. You have fire, wind, and water, and you can charge them up by holding down the trigger. You also have a parry mechanic, a block to absorb damage, a backstab, and you can use a melee attack and cards to stun enemies or create explosions. You'd think all of this would come together to make a really engaging, dynamic, and sophisticated gameplay system. I mean, all of the pieces are there, but I'm sad to say it just doesn't. Firstly, there's no combos in this game. Elements don't synergize with each other. You can't cast, let's say, fire and then cast wind to spread the fire flames. And you can't do the same with water. None of the spells interact with each other at all, and there's no melee combos either. There's no dodging, sliding, and there's no weapons. Essentially, you just cast out individual spells or hold them down for a charged attack while you walk around the combat arena, and that's really it. Spam enough attacks and you'll open up the chance to execute with your wire and then just rinse and repeat. There is some interplay with the wire mechanic because enemies can interrupt you while you're ripping their souls out, and you can wire multiple enemies at the same time if you get them all down low enough. So there is some micromanagement there, but that's honestly the extent of it, and I was really surprised. This is a very basic combat system, and that's shocking because the game has great style and it has tons of potential. The hand animations are really stylish and the spells feel pretty weighty and powerful. Alright, maybe not the water one, but the other ones do. But there's just no complexity to it all. The game needs a spell combo system and it needs a melee combo system too. In fact, the one punch you can do is so floaty feeling and useless you might as well not even use it. Like, what is this for? In a sense, there is no melee combat in this game, and the optional bow you can use feels pretty chinsy. The game needs a dodge or sidestep mechanic. It's very slow feeling on his feet as well. Crouching and stealth gameplay really isn't there either. It's just missing so many elements to make it feel mechanically satisfying. The parry is the most satisfying mechanical element to combat, and it's easy because enemy attacks are highly telegraphed. However, the game does not reward you enough for doing so. There's no riposte. You don't get that free stagger/critical hit combo on the enemy afterwards like you do in virtually every other video game in existence that has this mechanic. All you get is some ammo for your spells. I hate to keep saying it, but again, it just feels very dated. It's weird, like I enjoy the actual spells of this game, again they have great flair, but more so because flipping between them on the PS5 touchpad is really cool. You just flick different directions depending on what spell you want. However, again, it's just not thought out that well because tapping the touchpad is going to bring up your menu. So you'll accidentally be pulling up your map mid-combat sometimes because, well, it's impossible to be accurate 100% of the time. Oh, and on a side note, there is very, very little variety in this game in terms of what you can do in combat. The game only has 3 spells, and the wind spell is so far superior and has way more ammo than your other 2 spells, you'll be using it like 90% of the time. So in terms of variety, again, because there's no melee combos or weapons or sophisticated gameplay systems, the variety is just not there at all. I didn't have any expectations going into Ghostwire Tokyo because I no longer read social media or watch any gameplay trailers. I want to be surprised, and it helps me judge games without any preconceived notions or bias. I feel like that's important for someone who reviews games. But after I rendered this video, I took a look back at some of the early trailers, and it's really hard to tell what the heck this game was going to be. That kind of mystery can breed misguided expectations, and at the end of the road, this is not the horror game many people expected. This is a fictional ghost hunting story with sparkly neon spells and a rainy, Japanese-inspired mini open world. The paranormal elements are very present and well done, but again, this is not a scary horror game. Other gameplay elements are also pretty hot and cold. The game revolves around you finding Torii shrines to open up the map to keep the main story going and so you can find more side missions. But there's no activities to do. You cannot go into any of the buildings in the game unless it's a store or related to a quest. There's very little people to talk to. There's maybe 3 to 4 main characters. Virtually no minor lead characters. There's no vehicles. Parkour is very limited. Mission variety is very, very low. The amount of enemy types can be counted on 2 hands, and the game has a few frustrating moments where it takes your powers away from you since KK and Akito can be separated. This particular mission here, where you have to stand on a bridge and snipe ghosts with a bow that doesn't feel very good to shoot horde style before KK's health reaches 0, it just feels like it's straight out of an RTS campaign from 2005. Like, I really wanted to love this game, but as I continued to play it, it just dawned on me how average everything was. The city itself is a huge letdown. The tile sets, enemies, and buildings, they all look very similar. And beyond a few optional areas on the periphery, it makes for a very squished, samey feeling game. The uncomfortably close FOV that you cannot change, the cramped interiors, the slow movements of Akito, it just feels very boxy. In fact, the game takes place at night, always. There's no sun in this game, there's no daytime, there's no blue skies, there's no sunlight at all. Which would be fine if you had lots of different biomes and artistry that didn't all look the same. More gameplay elements too, they need to be there. I wish there was a saving grace, some sort of diamond in the rough moment, but honestly, I could not find it. The ending was possibly the best part about this game. It was touching, but it really didn't make me feel anything too much because the build-up and development just was not there. The story was so basic and just okay, very simple, presented in the most standard of ways. The graphics are just okay. The one puzzle system the game has is super basic again, and the game leans so heavily on the collectibles trope, that they end up just kind of getting in the way more than anything. The open world is dated, and you'll essentially just be following quest icons and opening torii gates on your way to its end. And again, like so many of these open world games with arbitrary level systems, the upgrade system is so incredibly bare bones and not exciting. Once again, it's another game where you spend upgrade points to increase the damage of your spells by 10%. I'd also like to point out that Ghostwire Tokyo has some pretty hardcore issues with its frame rate. The game does not hold 60 frames per second well, at all, even on its least graphically intensive setting. I honestly don't know what to say. I'm searching for words to describe my 15 or so hours with the game, and all I can come up with is, okay. It's just okay. Ghostwire Tokyo is okay. I'd love to talk about the game more, go into depth on the gameplay, the art, the story, explore the complexity of it all more, but I just feel like I can't do that. There's just nothing to dive into. Across all metrics, Ghostwire Tokyo is just such a basic, average game, but it could have been so much more. I wouldn't say it's great, it might be good at best, and very, very vanilla and dated at worst. The best way I can describe this game is that it does have great underlying things that could make an amazing game. Cool setting, cool ideas with the spells, good voice acting, and a cool concept. But it just doesn't have nearly the substance, mechanics, detail, complexity, variety, or polish that it needs. It's all missing from a game that seems to deserve far more. I did not hate my time with Ghostwire Tokyo, but I certainly was not wowed at all. You can get a lot better of a game than Ghostwire Tokyo for a lot less in both a linear and open world form. And there's no co-op, multiplayer, or substantial story content on the side, so replayability is also very low. Overall, I can't recommend the game at $60. In fact, I have to say, if the game was at a discounted mid-tier price of about $25 to $30, I think it might be a decent investment, but that's it. And that is sad because I always root for games that I choose to review. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Now normally I leave an extended written review in the comments, sort of a little cherry on the top for you guys. However, I just don't have anything more to say on the game, and I think that's a pretty real representation of my entire experience with it. Take care guys, and I'll see you in our next video. Peace.